I want to change up my desktop audio system at work. And it just so happened that Vigilant Audio reached out to me and asked if I would check out their wireless powered speaker called the SwitchOne. Now, I actually thought a powered, aka active speaker, would be a good idea to try out in my desktop audio system. So I said yes. And then when looking at the speakers, I immediately thought, what is this hi-fi switch on the rear? Can a powered speaker really sound hi-fi? Let me tell you all about my experience with the SwitchOnes and whether or not they will become the new solution for my desktop audio system at work. Now first, let me explain to you what my current desktop audio system is comprised of, which is basically a hodgepodge of gear that I threw together after buying the Shit Wrecker amplifier. I have that amplifier paired with a pair of Emotiva's B1 Plus speakers, but I also needed to use this Emotiva preamp in order to connect this U-turn turntable that I was able to sneak into my office. In short, it's a lot of gear that's very noticeable and takes up a lot of space. When Vigilant Audio sent me a pair of speakers, I thought these might be a good solution to sub into my system at work. And thanks to Vigilant Audio for sending me these speakers for free, but they're not paying me for this review and they didn't have any input before posting it. Now, funny story about the first time I actually used these speakers. In my office, it was during an office party and somebody needed to stream music wirelessly during this little party. And I just ran to my office, grabbed the box, quickly pulled out the speakers, easily connected my phone and started streaming music right away. Let me tell you, it was a much better option than what their plan was, which was to place an iPhone in a bowl on top of a refrigerator, play music for the party that way. I'm not kidding you. That was the original plan. So right away, I knew these speakers were going to be easy to set up. And as I was installing them on my desktop, I noticed that these speakers are really small. I mean, just look at them all, like in comparison to my already small Emotiva B1 Plus speakers. Now, because of this small size, they are a closed box design with 3-inch drivers and 4-inch radiators on each side. Now, at this point, I immediately thought there's no way that speakers this small can sound good, can they? And then I noticed on the back that it had a hi-fi switch, and I became really intrigued at the idea of a powered speaker sounding hi-fi. According to Vigilant Audio, this switch allows someone to use the speaker in 2 ways. First, as a studio monitor for content creators or music producers, and second, as a hi-fi speaker that offers a more relaxing listening experience. Now, as I mentioned before, setup was very easy, and I was immediately playing music in my office. I've been listening to a lot of Failure lately, especially their 1996 classic album, Fantastic Planet. And all I had to do was open up Tidal and immediately start streaming that album, and was blown away and surprised by the amount of detail I heard coming out of these tiny little speakers. Next, I played the album Kid A by Radiohead, and during the song Everything in Its Right Place, I noticed this weird robotic sounding singing voice coming out of the right speaker that I had never heard in the hundreds of times I listened to this song before. I then played the song Try Not to Breathe from REM's album Automatic for the People. And during that song, there's a part where Michael Stipe is doing sort of a callback vocal through a megaphone. And I could clearly hear that in the left speaker, while all the other background vocals filled in around it. And bass sounds were very musical. While listening to Automatic for the People, came to the song Sweetness Follows, and the bass line of that song is held down by a cello. And the bass was very deep and musical throughout that song. Now at this point, I remembered my U-turn turntable was still connected to the Emotiva preamp, and I wanted to make that connection on the RCA inputs on the rear of the SwitchOne speakers. Now, in order to do this test, I had to move the speakers closer to the turntable and bring in an external phono preamp. So I pulled out the Duke T4 Pro preamp, a product I recently reviewed here on this channel. Now, I really love the way the turntable, preamp, and SwitchOne speakers all mesh together. My vinyl records sounded great via this playback system, and I got a lot of compliments on just how great it looked overall on my desktop. Now, one thing I really love about these speakers is that I can easily jump back and forth between streaming and the RCA inputs without having to push a bunch of buttons. As soon as the album was done playing on my turntable, I just pulled out my phone, opened up Tidal, and immediately started playing music there. Also, it's worth noting that the SwitchOnes come with a 1/4 inch input on the rear, as well as a 3.5 millimeter input on the front of the speaker, giving you a total of 4 connection options: wireless, RCA, 1/4 inch, and 3.5 millimeter. The speakers also come with a headphone output on the front, which works great and gives someone even more versatility for listening playback, especially when you're in the office and you want to listen to music privately. Now, back to that switch on the rear. I found that I preferred listening in hi-fi mode over studio mode. It wasn't a huge difference overall, but in hi-fi mode, I heard a smoother sound with a tighter, more controlled bass. Now, speaking of bass, because these speakers are a closed box design, they do not have a rear porthole, but rather these 4-inch radiators on the side. Now, I found the bass to be present and not lacking, which was something I was originally concerned of when I first saw the small size of these speakers. Now, because I was listening in my office, I wasn't able to crank the volume and test the maximum output that I could get, but I did try to get them as loud as I could. And again, I was surprised by the spacious sound that came from these tiny little speakers. Not bad for a pair of speakers that only cost $250. So how would these speakers work best for you? If you're someone like me and is interested in upping their desktop playback system and looking for something with a small footprint without having to have a dedicated amplifier, these speakers would be a great option. Also, if you have a turntable but you don't have enough space for an entire system with an amplifier, speakers, all of that, you're just looking for a nice compact system, and I get this request a lot from friends who are in an apartment. They just don't have space for a large system. I used to always recommend Edifier powered speakers for them, but now I think I'm going to start sending them towards Vigilant audio instead. I know I will definitely continue to enjoy using these speakers at work, especially with my turntable. And I want to congratulate Vigilant Audio on a product that is not only designed well, but also sounds great. Now, if you want to use these speakers with a turntable, you're going to need an external phono preamp. I recently reviewed the Duke Audio T4 Pro external phono preamp on my channel and think it would be a great option to pair with your turntable and these speakers. If you're interested in learning more about that phono preamp, you can do so by watching this video here.